What we're trying to create is a community that's curious, that's interested in exploring new ideas.
Anybody who does adult community learning, you don't do it necessarily for the money, you do it because you believe in it.
Another one of Chelmsford's attributes is our fierce entrepreneurialism.
We're at Anglia Ruskin University, and it's the first workshop in a series of workshops exploring the future of Chelmsford. What's the vision for Chelmsford? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities that we can take forward to the next stage? And today we're really exploring the future of Chelmsford as a learning city.
You have the opportunity to be both pragmatic but also to have a set of values.
Learning, it liberates, it adds the quality of life. It helps people to engage.
There's room left for, let's call it civic Chelmsford, to say we like silversmithing. We think that's something unique and important to our area, and we care about it enough to find ways and means.
But I think the thing that we need to remember collectively in Chelmsford is that we wanted to make progress from a reasonably high level.
And I think it's one of our pieces of luck, if you like, that one of our natural attributes of many of our young people is that they will want to get on, in spite of things.
There's 70 universities in the States now have retirement communities on campus, so that you can continue to learn, continue to participate in an academic community. Had a really interesting 3-hour discussion around learning within Chelmsford, and what the discussion did was look at a number of different areas where learning takes place. The formal learning sector. There's a huge future for education in spaces and places, but they'll be very different. That the traditional categories of space, of where we thought learning took place, is becoming less and less relevant. But then around that, there was sort of rich network of other learning places and opportunities that take place within any city. Places like the V&A Science Museum are simultaneously used for serious scholarship and play and family experiences and classrooms. The libraries, the social spaces, the museums, and to really think about what that meant in terms of the overall mix of learning that we want to create in Chelmsford. One area we haven't touched on is the community library.
What impressed me the most was that there were actually books in there.
The librarians are all trained in mental health issues, that they're dealing with a full range of communities, 40 different languages. So we started with an exploration of the challenges, the political environment, the financial environment, the social environment within which Chelmsford was operating. So you're seeing schools now being run by commercial chief executives. They'll be looking for commercial partners to deliver learning. What's that going to mean?
And to what extent is the sort of notion of learning in some ways being watered down to a kind of skills or sort of leisure focus?
And then moved on to really start to think about the sort of opportunities for the city. What sort of place did we want to create? What sorts of values did we want to place on learning?
What people need to try to do is to have a set of value-driven quality indicators.
The opportunity for people to become critically engaged rather than simply entertained.
We have to be careful we don't make assumptions that quality is what happens within an accredited.
So we moved from quite a conceptual, abstract discussion around learning opportunities to what are the things that we could do now to start to create a process of change that would allow learning to become the centre of the community.
It really needs to get itself a vision of what this town could become were it to celebrate more vigorously its education.
We recognise that obviously everything connected, that other workshops around entrepreneurship, around other town issues would affect the learning outcomes, but we felt that learning was really central to everything that could happen in the future.
And that could be from a small solicitor to a big company. It could be the story of Marconi, could be laid out over Chelmsford. We could have a walk.
Through the discussions, we came up with a series of 10 points that really encapsulated the discussion that we had. 3 ideas really stood out for me as being particularly exciting and things that I really want to get going straight away. One of them was around thinking about all the spaces in Chelmsford as a learning environment, to think about how we can use the internal and external environments as opportunities for learning, to sort of create an internet of place, as one of the participants talked about. What would that mean if we really take that seriously?
The idea for the Story Centre, that hopefully it can go ahead in New London Road, is that it will be half retail and half learning, very, very flexible learning environment for children, for teachers, for writers.
The second of the three key ideas that was discussed was the notion of creating a student parliament.
A place where they meet together, where they have lots of opportunities for discourse, cross-school, cross-organisation, cross-age. Sounds interesting, doesn't it?
So bringing together students from schools, from colleges, from the university, to really get together and explore what the future learning environment should be.
Seen as equals, coming up with, their vision.
I think that offers huge opportunities for discussions around change.
So we do have some very good institutions. I think what's missing is the connections between those things.
The third opportunity was about creating a sort of virtual gateway into learning for Chelmsford that was really inclusive and expansive.
I'm trying to make the link between your physical presence and the internet where the information lies.
So to bring in all of the institutions that are engaged in learning to create a front door, a virtual front door where people can understand the offer and get entry into different learning experiences. And I think the combination of exploration of physical futures as well as virtual futures really provides great opportunities for Chelmsford. So I think the three things together combined both the abstract and the practical in a way that will really help to make big changes within the city.
What we're trying to do is frame the issues.
Chelmsford has already demonstrated a great deal of resilience in its recent history.
Is there the energy and charisma about the place to actually want to grow?
And what is the kind of things we think are going to drive what the future might be?
The definition of resilience by any means is not meant to mean how to keep the status quo.
Yeah. We're in the A Canteen in Chelmsford and we've been doing a workshop on what it means to have a resilient town.
When we talk about resilience, we talk about the ability to withstand or accommodate stresses and shocks. Sea level rise, which leads to issues of storm surges and flooding, food and energy resources and scarcity and security.
The session started with discussion about definitions of what a resilient city would be.
Resilience is the ability of a community to recover when we talk about urban systems and reorganise and respond to those shocks.
And the workshop looked at 4 themes to do with resilience: redundancy, robustness, flexibility and also learning.
Demographics. By 2025 there'll be 2 billion people aged 60 or more, and actually 70% of the world's elderly will be in developed countries.
And the conversations then were broadened out into the wider group, and we've been talking about the demographics of Chelmsford, the retail and business offer, employment offers for small and medium enterprises.
Is there something special about Chelmsford's character?
There are lots of things I love about Chelmsford, and it is the waterways primarily.
Not only can we walk in pleasant areas because we can come right along the river.
We've been talking about the physical attributes, the river and flooding, and looking at the issues that have changed in the past and which have been adapted and been fairly resilient, and the things that haven't worked in Chelmsford in the past.
One of the key factors which will allow us to judge the success or otherwise of a long-term strategy that we may or may not arrive at here is whether this gap between the haves and the have-nots increases or doesn't.
We were the last to fall into the 90s recession and the first to climb out, and we've done so again during this recession.
Some of the points that stood out for me were when we were looking at where they have learnt about resilience in Chelmsford. So, for example, the introduction of park and ride car parks and seeing the impact of that on the city.
I'm hoping to see a third park and ride, which will be obviously helpfully depressurising the route from the A12.
And looking at how that can grow and become more flexible and encourage then other modes of transport such as the walking and cycling within the city.
How do we go into areas which are dangerous at one level but are also very attractive to be in?
The suggestion is that you have sort of resilience champions within a commercial sector that
Another one would be the idea of resilience champions, who this was in the context of flooding and who gives flood warnings and who has provisions to deal with flood events in the city. And what was really interesting there was then looking at ways of subsidising certain organisations or SMEs or different bits of the third sector to come in and take on that responsibility and then be able to have access to new information systems or new office spaces or whatever through that.
When we actually want to be effective, we're putting the word out in completely different ways now.
The idea of virtual networks, there was a lot of discussion about the individual networks that exist at the moment, the idea of bringing those together and how to manifest them. Part of the skill then is joining up your kind of networks that you're saying you know a lot about with their networks, where they know a lot about the way in which IT and, for example, wireless hotspots might just start to congregate certain sectors that haven't yet come together, and the way that the website presence of even this project might start to influence some of those discussions and create better resilience through knowledge sharing and connectivity.
What I'm really talking about getting small businesses in, is getting them in, dotted around amongst the grain of the inner city, along the river, new developments.
Also, there was a really interesting discussion about the spaces that aren't being used in this town very well at the moment.
But if you were able to provide them with vibrant central spaces where they could do their distance working, but do it here in Chelmsford, so they didn't have to leave.
And the way to kind of use temporary uses or test bed sort of slightly different scenarios out in, and we talked about schools days with orchards in some of the car park structures, and or looking at car-free days or rollerblade days, whatever it is, through the town to try and kind of bring out some of the assets that only certain sections of the town residents perhaps are really aware of.
I think it also legitimises distance working because it overcomes some of the challenges that employers have.